SG Voices. It's really nice to have you on our webinar today. Excited to be talking about gaming. As convenience store operators, there's a lot of different ways to meet the customer's needs out there. We've been selling cigarettes and convenience items such as candy bars and Slurpees, and we moved into food service as well. And one thing as our society evolves is a new trend is gaming, and it's varied across states, depending on which state you operate in, what avenues you have to participate in it. But a good number of our study group members have moved into gaming over time, and it can be a little bit of a wild west out there too. Of what can I do legally and so forth. And we were introduced to J&J Gaming by some study group members who had used them. And one of the things they appreciated about them was their heart and desire to follow the laws of whatever the various states were, and make sure that they were delivering ethical and legal gaming out there. And so several study group members have used them over time. So today we're going to be talking about gaming and this new trend. Is there an opportunity for you to take advantage of it in your convenience store? So we'll provide a little history and overview of where that industry has come, a little insight into state-specific regulations, and even gaming category revenue overview. Really pleased to have Rob Dolrenry. He's the Senior Vice President of North America Corporate Accounts at J&J Gaming, a very knowledgeable individual who's going to be taking some time to share from his perspective. We also have Bill Martin, who's the Senior Vice President of Corporate Account Sales. So if there's any specific questions that Bill needs to answer, he'll dive into that. We want this to be educational for you. So as you do have questions, we invite you to type your question into the dialog box here in this GoToWebinar framework. I'll be able to read that, and I'll relay that to Rob or Bill at the appropriate time so we can have your questions answered. We'll spend about 30 minutes here on this webinar today. I wanted this to be an educational and good use of your time. Just a high-level study group and SG Voices is really designed to be your go-to resource for connecting with industry leaders, accessing trusted educational content, and discovering valuable insights for your business. And our mission is to empower you with relevant and actionable knowledge that's tailored to help you meet the challenges and opportunities that are shaping our industry today. So excited again to have Rob helping us understand how gaming can transform C-store profits. So with that introduction, Rob, I'm going to turn this over to you. We're going to record this, and we'll also send the slides of this out to our members afterwards so they can share it with a friend or review it as needed. So Rob,
that's great.
Tell us more about gaming.
Thanks, Jed. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Great to meet everyone virtually. Really look forward to spending the next 30 minutes discussing gaming and the distributed gaming specifically in a regulated environment. Kind of talk about some of the regulations and how it could potentially affect your business. And then from a category perspective, gaming over the years has transitioned to where it is now not just something that's in back rooms. It is a very profitable center for you in your operations. So here's kind of an overview of the four kind of key pillars that we're going to cover today. From a J&J perspective, we consider ourselves a national leader in gaming. We've been around almost 100 years. So founded in 1929, we are based out of Effingham, Illinois. We do operate about 4,500 locations around the country. We are exclusively a regulated gaming operator. So we really only operate in states that have legal regulated gaming and amusements as well. So we are shaping legislation as we move across the country. I personally reside in St. Louis, Missouri. If any of you have operations in Missouri, you know that we've had a lot of dialogue back and forth with our state legislature regarding some upcoming legislation. So we are in over about 4,000 locations. I thought it would be important to kind of let everyone see the map of the United States. These are the 13 states that we're in. We are growing at a pretty significant rate. If you take just a slot operator, casinos, and route operators, we are one of the largest in the country, only surpassed by Caesars, Penn, and Boyd in the number of machines that we operate. We are over about 1,500 team members across the country, so we have a very robust team that works tirelessly to grow this category around the country. Some of our partners in different states, we do focus really significantly on the convenience store segment. I personally have a 25-year history with the Anheuser-Busch network. And so key account management and calling on national, regional, and local chains is really my background, starting in the mid 90s and into today. So excited to jump in a little bit into kind of what is distributed gaming, what is regulated gaming. So it really started out in Nevada years and years ago as route gaming or route operations. And at its essence, it's the installation, operation, and maintenance of gaming devices in non-casino locations. Important, this is a state-run industry, so each state has their own different sets of regulations and rules and how they're governed. I'll get into some of those examples a little bit later in some of our bigger states. I would encourage you at the end of this to send questions or comments with respect to your states. For essence of time and really just kind of a high level, I figured I'd just focus on a few states. But as you can see from the map there, this is an industry that's pretty robust around the country. You can see the gray states that are in gray right there are states that we are working on. Our industry is considering / working on legislation. Some are a little further advanced than others, but we are actively optimistic about potential regulation in some of those states. One of the unique models, as you can see in the top left, is Oregon. Oregon is a state where they actually own the devices. So I think most everyone in this call knows the three-tier system, which was my background from the alcohol side of things. You had your supplier, distributor, and retailer. Regulated distributed gaming is very similar. It's really a three-tier system from a manufacturer, an operator like J&J, and retailers like yourselves. One of the unique parts of this is that there are, again, different regs. So for instance, in Illinois, you can see the economic splits are legislated. So there's really no negotiation amongst the splits. We think and believe that that's the best model around the country, just for the industry. Whereas in West Virginia, there's kind of a range where you can go between 40 and 50%. So we are regulated very similarly to casinos. A lot of background checks, financial disclosures. This is an industry that is age restricted. So it's important that, to have operators and licensees in this space, that the due diligence is done by the regulatory body to make sure that everyone is compliant. So as I mentioned, from a three-tier system perspective, you have your manufacturers. They sell the devices to us, depending on the state, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. It could depend on the type of device. For instance, in Illinois and Nevada, they are slot machines. They have a random number generator. It's a class 3 game, whereas in other states, it could be potentially a skill game like a Nebraska or a Georgia. So we really consider ourselves the center of the distributed gaming activity. We do a lot of things from obviously purchase the games, collect the cash, enter into agreements with locations, i.e. retailers. And as you can see on my bottom bullet point, this is considered a privilege. No matter which state we're in, there's really different hurdles to get licensure, whether that's our side of it, the manufacturer side, or the retailer side. So a lot of really high regulation in this industry. So I felt like this.
I'm curious, as you were talking about that map, you were showing the red states. Those are states that have quite a bit of regulation around it already. The gray, those people may be moving into it. The white states, can you kind of comment on what activity, if any, is going on there?
Sure. What I would say is there's some form of regulated gaming activity in 50 states. Others, they're depending on the type of gaming that they have. For instance, I'll use Oklahoma. A lot of tribal casinos. The tribes have been deeply entrenched in Oklahoma for quite some time, and there really hasn't been a lot of traction or movement to get regulation in Oklahoma. So I would say that the 5 that I have highlighted there in gray are probably further along in the form of legislation. But in all the other ones, it just either hasn't gotten traction or there's some barriers to our industry. Obviously, we know, there are people, categories, or even different industries that kind of have whether it's a monopoly or they have a hold on the market where they may just be a little further along. I would equate it to sports betting. As we saw with sports betting when it became legal in 2018, it started in one state, Nevada, and now it's working its way across the country. I believe it's still only in 35. So whether it's a legislative hangup or a competing industry hangup, some things just take time. So I'll skip
Thanks.
through and show you just, a little bit of, again, from a high level overview. We really view this right in the center, and that's the partnership. So if you look at the red bubble on the side, the players put money in, there's money out. The net proceeds is what we call the net terminal income, NTI, and that's really the revenue. And as I get into each state, I'll explain what happens to that revenue. At the bottom left, you see licensed manufacturers. Bottom right is the taxes. Um, you're as a location, really, it's provide the venue, share in the revenue, uh, have the employees pay your general business taxes. But I think that kind of a clear bullet to the far right, the central system, that's really the accountability here. So this industry is, again, highly regulated, but ensuring that there is consumer protections. There's protections for all licensure, all phases of the licensure process to make sure that that central system uh, has true visibility into the revenue that's being driven through your locations and from us as a middle tier. So I think this chart's important to kind of show. If you look at the left, revenue, the middle is number of locations, and the far right is number of devices. This was through July of this year. We try to update it every 6 months, but I think you can see it's nice to see a chart that's growing and going in a pretty positive direction. We had a little bit of a blip in 2020, as I'm pretty sure everybody on this call did, and so Illinois is our biggest market, second to Georgia, but you can see some of those carve outs in the pie charts at the bottom show that, really good growth, great momentum. Industry continues to grow in really all segments, but we do see that convenience stores are our fastest growing segment across the country.
So speaking of
So
that, Illinois, why is it the biggest segment out there? Does it have the longest history? Were they the first ones to try to develop some laws and regulations around it?
yeah, no, I think, well, in Illinois, the industry became regulated and legal in 2012. And what we found was that Illinois really embraced a true transparent environment by creating that central system, by engaging all tiers, manufacturers, operators, and retailers. And so I would say that if there was a best in class state, it would be Illinois on how they do it, a fully transparent system where people today could go log on to the Illinois Gaming Board's website and see the revenue flow, the funds in, the funds out, what each retail location makes. So I think that fully transparent, embraced by the state with barriers to entry. This wasn't just a cannibalistic category. It was a privilege, and it took time and diligence on retailers' parts, on our middle tier to get these licenses to really lead to the success that we've had in Illinois. And so as we look across the country at shaping and writing legislation, we look at Illinois and say, okay, this, again, safe, consumer protections in place, regulated properly for what is an age restricted product, with a nice revenue model for all tiers.
And then another point you made in there, you said convenience stores are your fastest growing category.
Mhm.
Why is that? Because convenience stores are used to handling age restricted products? Give me some insight there.
Yeah, I think two things. One, the need for the convenience segment post COVID was so critical. You really saw a shift from the on premise to that stay at home model. Convenience stores became the go-to category, go-to segment for consumers post COVID. I really think, to your point, Jed, the age-restricted product piece. I mean, it's clear to me, and I know it's clear to legislatures across the country. No one does age restriction better than the convenience stores, and so I'll touch on it towards the end. But what best-in-class gaming looks like to us comes from the convenience store segment. And I'll share some photos that I think as a visual learner, people will be able to see and say, oh, okay, I get it, because the convenience store, this category just fits absolutely perfect. Not trying to be major casinos and put 60, 70 games, but a limited number of games in an environment that's limited SKU, similar to convenience stores, is just a perfect fit. So from an economic perspective, this is the industry as a whole around the country. So very, very sizable. You're looking at about $10 billion in economic impact with about 3.4 billion in tax revenue. And again, growing. I think that 110,000 jobs is pretty important as well. And in an economy where job growth is critical, we are continuing to grow. On a state-by-state basis, as you can see, Illinois at $1.2 billion is our largest market by far. Nevada, 140 million. So, there's really a nice impact, not only to again, small business, but to the state as a whole as well. So again, I don't want to get too deep into all different types of compliances, but what I thought I would do would be to share three states and their different forms of regulation to give you an idea of what this looks like. So in Illinois, the industry is overseen by the gaming board. As I mentioned, all terminals are connected to a central system. Gameplay details change by state, whether that's max bet, how much you can win, how old you have to be. In Illinois, it's 21 plus. Um, Licensure comes through really four different eligible licenses. Liquor, pouring, and that can be convenience store or bar restaurant, veterans fraternals, and truck stops. As you can see, there's two different designations of truck stops, large or just a standard. Each state looks at what are some of the different, what I'll call levers that they can pull to try to designate what designates a segment. And so in Illinois, we've seen, you can have up to 10 VGTs if you're within 3 miles of a freeway with that 50,000 gallons of diesel. So size of property and fuel gallonage tends to direct as far as what sort of bucket you would fall in. The revenue split, pretty straightforward. It is roughly a third, a third, a third. State gets 30%, operator gets 32%, establishment, which would be the retailer, gets 32%. The local carve out we have found is really unique and important. And what that does is it puts 5% back to the local municipality where you as operators operate your business or as retailers. And so you see that money, 5% of the NTI is pretty significant. And so what we see in Illinois, and again, we're modeling legislation after this, is we see investment locally. We see new parks, new lights on ball fields, new fire trucks, new investment in that local piece. So where the money is generated, it stays right there. So that's a very nice part of legislation that's been pretty successful. And so, as I mentioned, about 8,700 locations with almost 50,000 VGTs. Pivoting to Georgia, a little different. Georgia is overseen by the Lottery Commission. So the GLC oversees the Georgia games. Games are called, I actually have a typo in here, my mistake. Games in Georgia are actually called COAMs, coin operated amusement devices. Cash devices are on the next Nebraska, so I apologize for that. In Georgia, you have to be 18, not 21 like Illinois. The biggest key difference with Georgia is that winnings cannot be redeemed for cash, only for in-store credit. And in 2022, they piloted a program where it could be allowed for a gift card redemption. So the Georgia Lottery has a gift card, very similar to a Visa or a MasterCard. It can be used universally. People can take it with them, use it at other locations. We've seen a nice bump in revenue by that kind of adaptability to be able to move that money and not have to redeem it for soda or chips or things like that. 9 games maximum in Georgia as well. And as you can see here, much more favorable revenue share split with only 10% going to the state and split 45-45 between operator and establishment. Little smaller size of industry, about 40,000 COAMs, 7,700 locations. One of the newer regulated states is Nebraska in the past 5 years. Another little bit differentiator here, Nebraska is overseen by the Department of Revenue. So Illinois is a gaming board, Georgia's a lottery, Nebraska is a Department of Revenue. All connected to central systems. In Nebraska, devices are called cash devices. And these are skill games similar to Georgia. So really more the predominance of skill relative to the random number generator slot machine type game you see in Illinois. Nebraska regulations is 19 years old, but you can pay out in cash there. Number of devices is determined by 4 devices up to 5,000 square foot, with 1 additional up to a max of 15. So again, I share this just to say Illinois 6, 10 max, Georgia 9, Nebraska 15, different tax structures, with Georgia being a 45, 45, 10 to the state. Nebraska, 5% state revenue tax. where the operator, meaning the retailer and us, split the remainder differently. So different terminology, but really the structure and the basis being very consistent across all states. You just see different nuances between the states. Nebraska, from a population perspective, obviously smaller population than Illinois and Georgia, 1,500 locations with about 5,400 cash devices throughout the state. So from a gaming category, I thought it would be important to start on how not to execute gaming. Gaming, like every profitable, successful category under your roof, has to be managed. It's important that it begins with your customer experience. As you all know, as tremendously successful operators, the customer experience in your stores is critical. Who are they seeing when they walk in the door? What does this look like? We think that starts with your go live. And so the first time your games become live, you really get that one chance to make a first impression. So making sure that as you enter a regulated gaming environment, are your employees properly trained? Has your operator partner come in and done a training for you? What is the alcohol process, if applicable? What does the redemption process look like? Troubleshooting. If a bill gets jammed in a game, what do you do? Who do you call? And then from a partner perspective, are they compliant? Are you following local, state laws? Pretty important because as everyone on this call realizes, having a license is a privilege. Whether that's an egg license, a liquor license, a tobacco license, or a gaming license, ensuring you're compliant, executing your marketing programs, and then making sure just that whole gaming area is clean and operating, which I'll touch on a little bit here in a moment. So clean, obviously the temperature, as we just kind of discussed, making sure it's big enough, that area is big enough, people are friendly and engaging. And then again, this really, I think, falls to the operator part. Operational excellence, like any technology or really any category inside your stores, is everything working? And I know that sounds simple, but oftentimes everyone forgets they've got to be working, they've got to be clean. As I mentioned, troubleshooting. If something goes wrong, what is that response time? When does this get back up? Everyone in this call is very familiar with ATMs. Having an ATM down for an extended period of time is losing money. These games are even more so on that. So security, for people that game, they want to make sure they're in a secure environment. Jed, you mentioned why the convenience store segment. I believe personally, this is another reason why C-stores are really secure. No one's, or one of the better locate segments to game at. No one's sitting on a bar stool. They're in an environment with the staff they're familiar with, that they're comfortable with, that they've been to 2-3 times during the week, whether it's to get fuel, buy milk, what have you. So you see a lot of comfortability in the C-store segment. And then technology, ensuring you have the proper technology, making sure you have the right redemption solution. Are you redeeming out of a redemption terminal like we utilize? Do you have the best games? To segue back to my beer category days, what's new is not always the best. You have to have your staple brands, and for every category that everyone on this call is aware of, you have to have your anchors, but you also have to have innovation. And so, we look at that. We always buy new games, we put new games in, but we're also cognizant that new isn't always the best, but legacy isn't always the best either. So really optimizing that gaming portfolio you have, looking at it and make sure the gaming performance is there. Marketing, we could we could have a presentation on marketing alone, but I think from a one slide perspective, it's a plan, and ensuring that in a productive, profitable gaming environment, you have to have a plan customized to you. Everyone knows all the marketing elements that are out there in today's world: social, digital, billboards, feather banners. There's interior, exterior, so much marketing out there trying to just get that consumer's dollar. But I bolded it at the bottom because I think it's pretty important. Whatever you do needs to support your brand. You're very successful for a lot of different reasons, and your brand should speak for itself. So integrating gaming into your brand and customizing that is pretty critical to the success of the gaming operation. And like any category, how are you managing it? Making sure you're managing it, looking at the money that goes in. What is your time frame? We have a pretty robust team that analyzes numbers to the nth degree. But it's important to realize that, and you can look at that chart on the bottom. At 2 a.m., you're not making any money. Your liquor licenses are only for certain hours. So making sure you're looking at the funds in, or whatever that may be, depending on the day, the time, the month, to maximize that revenue accordingly. And then for the last bullet point, industry trends. This is, as I mentioned, from the legislative piece, is growing at a very rapid rate. Making sure you stay up on trends, or leaning on your operator for that. Hey, what's new, what's out there, what's working, what's not. That comes through the business review, talking about your category, making sure you're optimizing it. So as a best practices, I thought I would just share a few examples. These are just a few of how gaming has evolved from that first picture of shoving 3 or 4 games in a back corner with bottled water into an environment that's successful. And so again, private room, keeping them clean, nice flooring, subtle lighting. You can see some of the smoked glass, backlit signs, really that separate private area. um, Carpeted floors here. You can see some of the backlit signs, games at a nice distance from each other, extra chairs for seating, tables with cup holders, just little things to really, again, this category is a bit different than, and again, I'll use my experience, the beer category. You have to manage this properly. It doesn't take a lot of time, but ensuring you're looking at the nuances and, as my kids like to say, giving it the right vibe is pretty important for the success of your operation. Here, you can see that separation wall by where the door is. So this was kind of an add-on extra build to create space, taking away from another category to put a little more profitable category there. So that is a segue into some category insights in the C-store segment. We're members of NACS, and as we look at NACS, and gaming has started to really take off around the country. We've started to kind of really dig our arms deeper. It's hard in states that don't have the full visibility, like in Illinois, into the revenue per square foot. But we started to compare ourselves to other categories. And on a GP per store per month basis. Now, again, this is using some of our averages from Illinois relative to what NACS has reported in the past. And then really drilling this down and showing that NACS, as they've reviewed things, and again, there's a lot of different parameters, but as they break convenience stores down into top quartile, bottom quartile, the annual revenue per square foot on the average is $75 in the top quartile, meaning a larger, maybe nicer, more SKU environment. Whereas the bottom quartile, again, this is just based on square footage, is roughly 37 a square foot. When you look at our gaming operations in Illinois and Georgia, the revenue per square foot for gaming is almost $1,900 per square foot, and in Georgia, 16. So looking at how you allocate space to any category, as all of you I'm sure do, pretty important to ensure that it's generating the proper amount of revenue. And from a category in our industry, we're pretty proud of what that delivers. So, what can you do? How can you help? What are some things you can do? I know this can be overwhelming, but I thought it would be important to say, legislative efforts for an emerging category, for something that's growing to drive this much revenue, it really takes advocacy, as all of you know. And I think being aware of what pending legislation is out there, how it can support your business, how it may hurt your business. So knowledge is really the biggest. Who's going to be a winner? Who's going to be a loser? Everybody on this call realizes that as legislators at a local, state, and national level pass laws or change regulations, some people win, some people lose. Making sure that you're active in that process, in knowing what is coming, really understanding how this could affect and transform your business. I'm sure you're all familiar with your trade associations or members of them. What are those fundraisers? And I do think, I don't think, I know, your voice is extraordinarily important. When Rob and the J&J team walk into capitals and state legislatures, they realize we're an industry that wants to get brought to life, or we want to protect our what we have. As retailers, you employ a lot of people in your states. You pay a lot of taxes. And as we said earlier, you truly are the experts at regulated age restricted product. I think that's an important position to be in. And there's no question your voice is very significant and very loud to your legislatures. So I would encourage you all just to take an active voice. If gaming is something that makes sense to you and your operation, the revenue potential is significant. Really being active on that legislative front could be very successful. I have attached a QR code. We have a lot of advocacy resources. Our team is pretty tireless in this. So I'd encourage everyone to visit through this QR code or my information as well. We have our website. There's a lot of tools that you can learn about to kind of really just understand that advocacy part and what's going on at your state level, what may potentially be coming, and how it could affect you.
Good stuff. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate all the insight on how we can use gaming. I'm curious, where does J&J fit in terms of what you talked about best practices? Is there support that you provide to retailers as they're entering gaming?
Absolutely, we do. So, we give them guidance, which first and foremost starts with licensure. So ensuring that you get the proper license. It's marketing materials and all the different games. That's step 2 and step 3. Understanding the application process, understanding what it takes to get licensed in a timely manner, depending on the state. In a funny manner, I'm selling a car here pretty soon, and I went to the state of Missouri's website and I looked at all the different forms. It can be overwhelming just to sell a vehicle. So I think our guidance comes initially in the form of that licensure perspective. What do you need? Because as everyone knows with state governments, they're busy, they have a lot going on, and to fill something out improperly or to forget something, you may go to the back of the list. So really, I think to answer your question directly, Jed, we start with walking our partners through that licensure step to ensure they understand it and they're licensed in a proper time and in a proper manner.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, for the audience, we've only got so much time here, but if you have questions, you can see Rob's contact information on here. We'll also send these slides out to you, but I know that either Rob or Bill would be happy to have more in-depth conversations. A lot of them are probably specific to the individual state that you're in and would be better in a one-on-one kind of conversation. But just wanted to say thank you to Rob and Bill and J&J Gaming for hosting this webinar with us. And for the audience, just thank you for joining us here today. And for the audience, before you go, just would like to remind you to check out our SG Voices website for more valuable content that's there. We've got articles, webinars, and other industry-specific resources. And also, mark January 15th on your calendar. We'll have our next webinar in the new year with Upside, and we'll be talking about the modern convenience store customer. And Upside collects billions of transaction data, and so they'll be just describing what all that transaction data is revealing about trends in the industry. So that's January 15th. Mark that. And lastly, before you go, as you sign off, it'll be a very short 2-question survey. We want your feedback. Please check that, fill it out, because that helps us make these webinars most valuable to you, which is what we want to deliver at the end of the day. So have a very Merry Christmas, a wonderful holiday season, and look forward to seeing you in the new year on our next webinar. Take care.